Welcome to Tsunami. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Tsunami. I'm Satsunami and joining me to be the very best, like no one ever was, is my very good friend Craig. Hey Craig, welcome back.
Hello, Satsunami. It's me. I'm cuter than Pikachu, cooler than Articuno, and I take more lightning damage than Gyarados. It's Craigie C. How's it going?
Okay, that is all the time we have left for this episode. If you
Oh man, I workshopped that for hours. I hope that was the best intro I've ever done.
No, okay, you get a golf clap for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, how are you doing, Craig?
I'm doing pretty good, you know. Busy life, good in lockdown. So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say. So good. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be chatting about Pokemania. So I'll throw it back to you. How are you?
Yeah, I am very well. I'm very hyped to be talking about Pokemania today. Yeah, I was just saying that before we came on. The fact that this is actually the very first Pokemon-centric episode of Tsunami, which is really weird considering the amount of times that we've actually talked about Pokemon, you know, like very indirectly. Like,
Yep.
kind of referencing it for, like, childhood games and things like that, but not actually being like, yeah, today is a episode all about Pokemon, so this is, like, the redemption arc of Tsunami, where we can go back and, yeah, just focus on Pokemania, which is going to be great. So, yeah, before we dive into it, okay, I'm throwing you under the bus slightly here, but I was just going to ask, how would you define Pokemania to anybody who doesn't know, which I assume that's like a very small minority of people who probably
Yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah. I can't. It's bizarre to me to imagine that someone wouldn't know, but you know,
Mhm.
we'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Mhm.
There's a lot people will listen to your show that are quite a lot bit younger than us. So obviously Pokemon, kind of a big deal. And when we were growing up, I think it was about 98, 99. Like, that's the 90s, obviously. 1990s, not the 2090s. We're not cyberpunk yet. When Pokemon started getting big, and it didn't like get big, it got gigantic. It turned for overnight almost into
Yeah.
like a global phenomenon. So much so we'll probably get into it more in the episode, but like it changed television. Like television had to change, and certainly in the UK there was an entire TV show based around the fact that they had Pokemon shown, and once Pokemon was gone, that TV show collapsed. You know, it was all sorts of things. It was so huge and so all-encompassing for just our childhoods, basically. And then one day it just kind of got up and left. So that was Pokemania. It was kind of like Beatlesmania, but unlike Beatlesmania, there was a lot less screaming girls and a lot less good stuff coming out of it.
Yeah, it's weird to think that when we were growing up, and again, we're probably showing our age here by saying it was like our childhood in the 90s. But yeah, it was hard not to see anything to do with Pokemon. Like, even bootleg things, or
Yeah.
it's honestly like you couldn't like go two steps without like a child who had like a Pokemon backpack, had like Pokemon gloves, had Pokemon. You know, honestly, it was almost as if the world was just. Actually, I was kind of laughing about this earlier, but I do feel kind of, I feel kind of bad for like the parents at the time. I know we kind, or not us personally, but I know you see people who give kids who let's say Fortnite or something like that, whatever's popular, they give them a hard time and say, oh, I don't understand all this dancing and all of this and that. But they probably, like our parents and anyone quite old at the time, probably thought the same for us when we were growing
Oh,
up on Pokemon.
100%.
And it's weird, it's something you don't see through the eyes of a child, but when you actually get older and you see these trends come and go, you're like, oh my god, I am so sorry. Yeah.
And it's amazing because like with Pokemon, it's but Fortnite's a great example of like what's kind of like a great thing now, but Fortnite's still it's still a game. There is
Yeah.
like the dances and there's some clothing, but it's not like how all consuming Pokemon is.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to each sort of branch of Pokemon, but like Fortnite has a lot of catching up to do to get as like in terms of just sheer merchandise before it can catch up with Pokemon.
I mean, it's true. It's like this is actually a fact that I honestly never realized until I started researching this. But the fact that Pokemon is like the highest grossing media franchise, like far above like Hello Kitty, far above Disney and things, which is something that completely blindsided me because I was like,
Mm.
there is no way. But if you kind of dial back to the 90s when it was all kicking off and just the kind of like the rise of it throughout the years, it's something that's never really left, has it?
Well, it's quite funny because we like when I was I was doing very similar reading to you, and I was looking at
Hmm.
stats over the years, and there's obvious peaks and valleys,
Hmm.
but pretty much I'm obviously skipping way ahead in the timeline here, but it doesn't go away, but it does go out of like the public psyche for a long time,
Hmm.
and it's not really, well, that's not fair. It goes out of like general mainstream popularity, for a lot of the other games, especially once it gets onto like the stranger DS consoles, and it's not really until Pokemon Go that the whole nostalgia wave kicks in. It's like round two,
Yeah.
and if you look at the numbers, it's like obviously the initial rise is when they make tons of money, and then they keep making money, keep making good money, and then Pokemon Go comes out, and the company just turns into just a monster. Like, that's when it becomes the highest grossing thing ever. It's just an absolute monstrosity by that point. It's incredible how they managed it.
I have to admit, it reminds me of, and this is going to sound like a weird analogy, but and it's something I'm going to get into a bit later as well. But it's like, as we were saying, like, although Pokemania, especially in the 90s, early 2000s, was like by far at its peak, and then kind of later on it started to like decrease in relevant, well, not in relevance, but it's like I think the more like other series came out that were quite similar. In fact, it was something that I found out today that it's called I think it's the Mon genre or something like that, where it's like all shows that are very similar to Pokemon. So you got like Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Beyblade, the whole like collectathons
Yeah, yeah.
kind of thing. So it was like the more those series were kind of coming along, the more saturated the market kind of became. It almost reminds me of like a very tall person walking in like a swimming pool. And it's like, you know how you've got the shallow end and you've got the deep end, and it's like although the person's like walking like along, the head is still above the water, and it kind of reminds me of that's probably how Pokemon is. Like although there's all this kind of saturation around them, they've still got their head above water, and they're still, they're still, don't want to like make a bad pun and say head over shoulders, but they're just still above almost in that sense, and they never really got drowned out though, did they?
No.
Like even when the mania died and everything, which is something we'll come on to later, but even when that kind of died away, they never fell under, did they?
No, and it's something like even people that didn't follow Pokemon, they'll
Mm-hmm.
still be able to pick out what a Pokemon is. You know what I mean? Like if you were to show someone that hasn't followed past Gen 2,
Mm-hmm.
Greninja, or trying to think like the Mega Evolution Pokemon, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's Gengar. Oh well, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? They
Yeah.
still Pokemon still kept a quite distinct style, and I think that's always served it very well. And I think it's always remained somewhat popular. The games have always been good,
Mm-hmm.
like good enough to keep getting fans, and there's always been a TV show with people that aims at kids, so it's never going to vanish. Like I said, it's really like in the last few years, it's exploded once again. Partly, in fact, the fact that our generation's old enough to have money to spend.
Right. I mean, I have to admit, I think that nostalgia definitely plays like a large part in that.
Oh yeah,
The fact that Pokemon was definitely its strongest during like Generation 1, and just the fact that it is weird because whenever you see any remakes or things like that, they always cash in on the nostalgia. And I mean, look at Pokemon Go, as you were saying, that's like, I think that came out in 2016,
yep,
and when that came out, they focused solely on like just catching Gen 1 Pokemon. So
yep.
they didn't introduce, like, I think they're doing it like slowly through phases, like every couple of months for each generation. But when it came out, it was solely Generation 1. And I mean, it's a great like marketing tactic, don't get me wrong. It's like, it's genius, I suppose, to, as you said, capitalise in that market of people that are going to A, feel nostalgic, and B, have money to spend to kind
Yep.
of, I mean, you don't have to spend money in Pokemon Go, but if you're buying extras or whatever, it's quite a good tactic, but that is something that, and again, I know we'll talk about this later, but it is something that I think they've maintained to a high standard, I would say. in terms of like marketing
Oh yeah.
for the franchise. So speaking of marketing, though, I'll let you answer this one first. I was gonna ask, like, what was your introduction to the series back in the day?
Man, I don't even know if I can answer that. Like, it's one of
Hmm.
those things. It just was there, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah,
that's really tough. I actually don't have an answer for that.
yeah.
I did that. I did have a wee think before we started, and for me, it was just always there. I can't think of a distinct moment where it happens. I remember just being like, I remember getting Pokemon Yellow on the Game Boy Color. I must have been. That was the first Pokemon game I got, but by that point, I already knew it. So I don't even know like how big it must have been by that point. I don't remember ever seeing my first episode or anything like that. No, for me, it was always just something I knew of. What about you?
I am exactly the same. It's so funny you say that, like genuinely. Like I was trying to think this as well, and the earliest memory I can think of is when I was playing. I think it was definitely I was the same Pokemon Yellow, which apparently came out here, and I could be wrong on this, but I think it came out in the year 2000, which I thought it came out earlier than that. I was convinced it came out in like 97, but I think that was more the American, or not American, sorry, the Japanese release, and then I think it was like 98, 99 that Red and Blue came out, and then it was 2000 that Yellow came out, which was based more on the anime. So I'm
Yep.
thinking that maybe I watched the anime first, and
Yeah,
then
100%. Because I think that's what I am as well. Because
yeah,
I knew like Misty and like the other characters by the time I'd played the game.
yeah,
So like I'd already seen the anime by that point. It's also I'm going to point this out before we start.
mhm,
It's so weird to call Pokemon an anime. Like I
yeah,
know it is, and I just do not consider it to be an anime. In my head, it's just a cartoon, but obviously
yeah.
it's a weird one.
Yeah, because the weird thing is, like, you know how it's gonna end. Like, I always remember there was a guy that, and I'm not calling him out for enjoying it or anything, but there was a guy I used to know in university who was still, at the time, really into the anime, and he would be like, oh, I wonder, if Ash will catch this Pokemon or he'll catch this Pokemon. And all I could keep thinking in my head was, at the end of the day, I don't really think it matters. Like, there's no real stakes in it.
No.
That like not enough that you're gonna go, oh, I wonder. Like as a kid, obviously, you'll think, oh, what's gonna happen next? But as an adult, you're like, yeah, they're gonna battle. They'll battle Team Rocket. Team Rocket will bugger off. That's it. There's nothing kind of substantial. I mean, especially in the early seasons, it's really just to sell toys, isn't it?
Have you gone back and watched it?
Some of them. Yeah, see, the weird thing is, I didn't watch like the typical episodes. I just chose like random ones that I actually don't remember watching. So, like, one of them was about, I think the three of them for some reason go to this town to watch a magician, and then this weird magician starts hypnotizing them with an executor, and then he nearly causes a stampede. It was like a surreal fever dream watching it. I was just like, what's actually going on here? And it sounds like such an old thing to say. It's almost like I've gone back to that period of time where my parents have probably watched it and been like, what is this rubbish? And there was another one where it was like two rival gyms, and for some reason Pikachu really loves ketchup, which I'm like, I don't remember any of this. it's just, it's really, it is bizarre. Like, have you gone back as well to watch it?
Yeah, me and my wife would do like a Saturday morning cartoon thing we would do.
Hmm.
So like we would on a Saturday morning we'd get a bowl of cereal and watch some cartoons and like we did that. That's how we watched My Hero Academia. That's how we watched bits of the Clone Wars. We did that. We did a couple of various shows and like various things from like adult shows, like kid shows and stuff.
Hmm.
And it was like we only got like 5 or 6 episodes of Pokemon, and we are like, no, this is dreadful. Like it was
Yeah.
so hard to watch, and like I said, we're not highbrow people. We
Yeah.
weren't sitting watching like 2001: A Space Odyssey every Saturday morning.
Hmm.
It was just supposed to be schlock to keep us
Hmm.
entertained in the morning. And like yeah, it was literally we got 6 episodes. And we're like this is boring. I don't understand how it's so boring and how I loved it so much. Which is quite fascinating to like something that I thought like the nostalgia might carry me.
Hmm.
And it did for like the first episode, and then after that, I was like, no, I'd rather sit and watch Yu-Gi-Oh or something.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like, did you ever notice, like, and again, I'm not trying to critique the Pokemon anime here, but it's like, did you notice, like, how there's, like, no stakes or anything to it? It just almost feels as if they're plodding from like city A to city B, and then there's just like, oh, we met a random on the way, and it's like, this is so dangerous for children. It's like, I know that's like a kind of common thing where it's like, oh, you're 10 years old, here, take a fire breathing lizard. But like, kind of like going on that point, I remember you and I watched the first Pokemon film. Like, it was a good couple of years ago now, but we both watched it, and I think we both agreed as we were watching it, we were just like, yeah, this isn't very good. Or not as good as we remember it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually want to give a little bit of context for this because
Yeah,
the
yeah, go
context
for
is
it.
quite funny. Me and Satsu used to do like a bad movie club, and we'd watch terrible movies. And I proposed that we watched the Pokemon movie. It's on like Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic, whatever, at like 30 out of 100. And people were indignant about that. People were very upset that I would dare call the Pokemon movie a bad movie. And I was like, no, it must be. And everyone's like, no, this movie was one of the greatest moments of our childhood. There's no way this movie's bad. And I think we all sat there in silence and just hated it. And when we were done, we was like, "Yeah, let's just move on. That wasn't great."
Yeah. I think the ironic thing was after we watched that, we moved on to the Digimon film, which was
We
even
did indeed.
worse.
Yeah.
Which is another chat tsunami in itself. Like honestly, that film is just like a gold mine of just what is going on here. But yeah, it's weird because even with a film like that and with the anime, there was nothing that could stop it. And it was actually when I was researching this, I was also thinking of the infamous episodes that fortunately never came over here called Electric Soldier Porygon, which is of course the infamous one where I think it was 97. I could be wrong, but I think it was 97 where basically the premise is that they go into the Pokemon PC to stop Team Rocket, and when they're in there, they have to stop like a missile blowing them up, and they're on the back of this Porygon, and Pikachu ends up like blasting it, causing these like red and blue lights to start flashing, but many of you will probably know this already, but this caused like a lot of like epileptic fits and convulsions and things to Japanese children. And that actually, that's quite an interesting thing, kind of beside that it actually affected the way animation was done as well.
Really?
Yeah, like it was something to do with I think it was 12 hertz or something, that the flashing was going at. So they had to revise like the whole way that they did certain action scenes and the frequency that certain patterns could flash across the screen, because I think they had to edit the intro as well because there was a lot of like strobe lights at the beginning, which wasn't carried over to our version of it, fortunately. But yeah, apparently that was the case. I don't know if it affected other shows like Dragon Ball. I'm sure I heard someone say that, because you know that is also like a very kind of flashy show as well, with all the energy blasts and things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it was so big that it actually affected the way that they did animation, which I thought was quite interesting. And it goes to show though that it's not, it wasn't like one of these shows that like that happened and people said, oh, it's a tragedy, and they never like, you know, touched it again. It was like Pokemon still kept going after that. And it just shows like the massive nature of Pokemon, that it's able to have something so horrible happen to these poor kids. And then it's just like, yeah. Anyway, the games, you know, just to keep
on.
going. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Even though, as we were saying, the show doesn't really, I wouldn't say the show holds up. And I mean, I've even seen clips of like the later ones, and I just remember them being just the same, really. Just a different region.
Can we talk about, though, this might be a bit UK centric, so apologies people not listen, but can we talk about what surrounded Pokemon, the Pokemon show in the UK? Because there was an entire like kids TV show around it. I think it was called SMTV Live,
Oh,
featuring megastars Ant and Dec and Cat Deely. They weren't all megastars at the time, we were just like normal people. They basically based that entire show on the fact of, by the way, guys, we have Pokemon. And like they would dedicate a segment before the episode to Pokemon. They would dedicate obviously the episode of Pokemon, and then they would dedicate two segments or a segment afterwards for the Ant and Dec would do different skits about Pokemon. And it was like they dedicated like an hour to an hour and a half of a 3 hour kids show to Pokemon. That was how huge it was. And once Pokemon, I don't know what happened to the actual show. I don't know if it was between seasons or whatever happened, but basically it stopped airing on this SMTV Live, and then like the whole show collapsed. It's like ridiculous how fast it all moves. Like, and that just kind of shows you again, watching it as an adult, maybe not a big deal, but kids were not missing that stuff.
You know, it's funny you say that because I don't know whether it's the same show or not, but there was definitely a Saturday morning one. I always remember when they were in like Johto and everything,
Mm.
and they basically, I can't even remember what it was, but they basically were doing like it was like a top 10 episodes or something of that region, and it was really interesting.
Mm.
Because it was like, yeah, we're going to do like the top 10, episodes back to back. And it was like, that was crazy, especially to me, because it was like,
Mm.
I mean, probably it was more acceptable back then because, and this is kind of a like context thing as well, the internet wasn't as big back then.
No.
I'm not trying to make us sound really old here, but the internet was definitely not as big back when we were younger. Like, I think it wasn't until like the early 2000s that we only got dial-up internet, and even then it's not to the same degree as we use the internet nowadays. There was kind of like a mystery to it, it's like what you got was what was presented in front of you, and anything like beyond that was just like like schoolyard rumors, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. And Pokemon had a lot of schoolyard rumors when came to everything to do with the games and the shows and everything like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, though, isn't it? It's like, on the one hand, nowadays, you don't have to waste your time, like, going to Bill to, talk to him 100 times to access his garden. You can just look it up online. But back then, there were so many rumours and things where you could just be like, oh yeah, if you beat the Elite Four 100 times, you can, I can't even remember, you'll get a special, like, Digimon or something. Like, really ridiculous over the top things that would not be considered, like, rational nowadays. Back then, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that could be possible.
You can still find,
Yeah.
what's it called again? Is it Angel Fire or something? Was it,
What
what's the
one?
name of it was like some kind of early forum. Someone will put it up in chat probably. And it was like the early game rumors forum. And if you Google nowadays, even just like Pokemon cheats or Pokemon Silver cheats or something like that, it will come up. And it was like, people would put up things like, oh, if you do, yeah, like beat the Elite 400 times, the patch of grass next to Pallet Town, which is behind a wall, will open up and you can catch level 100 Mews in it and stuff. And it would be on the internet, so it must have been true. And like that was just like even that kind of fact checking was huge as well.
Yeah, I always remember what do you call that art? It's like where they use text to make like the big pictures. Is it
Oh,
ASCII?
Askia.
Yeah, where you would have that, and it would be like, I don't know if it was Neofax or something like that, but it was like those kind of websites. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it was like you'd be navigating all of these weird websites just to be like, is this true? Can you get a level 100 Mew under the truck or whatever? There was so many, and that was the thing though, because as we said, there wasn't a reliable source of internet and everything. Yeah, it just added to that mystery that you wanted to learn more about Pokemon, both through the world and through the games, the anime, the sticker book, even. I think,
Card game.
yeah. Oh Jesus, the card game. I did you get into the card game?
It
Yeah.
depends what you mean by get into it because I collected the cards. I think like most people our age probably did. But
Yeah.
getting into the actual deck building game, no way. And I actually I can't remember, it was a few years ago now. I think it was when I was at uni. I went back and actually got my hands on a copy of the there was a Game Boy Color trading Pokemon TCG game.
Oh yeah.
And it's actually really good. The card game's really fun. It's quite simple, which helps me because I don't have time to learn how to meta game. So I just like it when a game gives me the answers and I kind of just feel really smart.
Yeah.
And yeah, the I never played the game properly as a kid, but actually playing it as an adult's really fun. It was funny to experience that a lot of the cards that we held in high regard
Mhm.
as kids were actually terrible. Like Charizard, the shiny Charizard, the mythical shiny Charizard
Yeah.
is actually a pretty bad deck card, like for how you have to use it. Well, one of the best cards in the game is like the Chop.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
He was the front man of every one of my decks in that game.
Yeah, I was in exactly the same boat as you. I used to collect them, and I think I've only played a handful of games in my life, and they were like some of the worst experiences I've ever had. Like I don't know if I've told you this before about the time I gambled away a Chansey card. Did I ever tell you that?
I think you might have done, but
Yeah.
let's hear it.
So Yeah, just to explain, I used to have a quote unquote friend, which you can't see, but I'm using air quotes here, who challenged me to a Pokemon card battle. You know, like all Yu-Gi-Oh style.
Hmm.
I challenge you to a duel. And it's like, you know what, I'm going to go for it. Because I had this Chansey, which I think it was like a holographic card, which was pretty neat, not going to lie. And I just like pulled it out, like one of the packets recently. So he was like, oh, if I win, then you can have my Charizard. And he had like one of the OG Charizard cards. You know,
Oh,
the
yeah.
ones with like 100. You know, basically the ones that everyone seems to be obsessed with buying nowadays.
Yep.
To
Yeah, if
kind
you
of
got a
float
mint,
it.
yeah, if you
Yeah,
got a mint condition one, they're worth like 25 grand or something.
yeah, something like that. And I was like, right, I'll fight you with this Chansey. Flash forward, and spoilers, I didn't win. Got my Chansey taken off. I was told, I like to think I was a bit braver than my parents' accounts telling me that I was crying. I was not happy either way that I'd lost this card. So I remember going up to school to this kid the next day being like, oh, how's my card doing? And he was just like, he basically turned around and went, oh, I traded that off. And I've just had that like bitter resentment since. That not
Um,
even, like I haven't spoken to him for years, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't
that
matter.
was my next question because
Yeah,
so this is
no.
a bit of a spoiler. This is a bit of a spoiler for people listening. I'll tread carefully here not to give
Yeah.
away any details.
Mhm.
But me and Satsy went to the same school,
Mhm.
so I'm genuinely curious who this was and if I can get in touch with him. Gonna message him tonight. Hey, you little you
Yeah.
trading away. That's his
Chatsy.
that's his chancy card. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just gonna start giving them grief, mate.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
talking on Discord, so see afterwards, just give me a wee message on Discord. I'll hunt them down for you.
yeah.
We'll get this sorted.
Yeah. Well, if it helps, it was primary school.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
did we not
yeah,
go
we
to the
did.
same primary school? Yeah,
I
yeah,
think we did,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah, so yeah,
even
yeah. Just
even at all, I'll tell you after
we'll
the
sort this.
stream.
We'll sort this.
We'll get it
Perfect. We'll
sorted.
sort this out. We'll get this sorted. We'll get them to get you a chance to go.
Yeah, this is honestly like the Taken. This is like the Taken when it's like, I don't know who you are, but you have my chance. It's like, yeah, that Chansey is long gone. I always just felt really annoyed at that, but I mean, it's just like genuinely something that's, it's like, one of those things that is like, it's a very, oh, what's the word, It's like, obviously it's a very first world problem. It's not something that like I lie in bed at night, kind of, sleeping, and then I wake up at like 3 in the morning and go, I should have never bet that card. Just really.
You're talking to someone like, oh, I took a bit of a chance on that. You're like, chance?
A chance.
Chancey? No, not a
What
chance.
have I done? Just sitting there, just having a breakdown. Yeah, but I mean, Pokemon actually got so big in our school that, I mean, do you remember like the ban on Pokemon cards?
I do, and I
Yeah.
also think I remember the reason why.
Well,
Basically,
mm,
there was criminal organization was started up in our school around Pokemon cards to do with trading the cards for money, trading the
oh,
card for food, people being beaten up by the cards. Like it became like it was organized crime happened in our school, all because of like some idiot brought in a shiny Charizard and that was it, man. Like the
oh.
school goes into a meltdown, they're locking down the doors and everything, man. It was
That's amazing. In fact, I'll go one step further. I remember parents calling one another. I genuinely remember my mum getting a phone call because people were like giving each other like cards and things and
yeah.
being like, "Is it okay for Satsu to have this card?" And things like that, because I know he gave it away. It's like, is that okay? And I'm like, oh, it was an utter mess. It's just. I don't want to give the impression that we grew up in like the pokeyhood, as it were. It's like,
No, but this is important because this
yeah,
is important to give you the impression of
oh yeah,
this is how important Pokemon was. Gambling existed in our school, like something that is illegal happened in our school because of how obsessed we were with Pokemon.
It's like genuinely though, you could not walk the playground without people either playing Pokemon, talking
No.
about Pokemon. I remember once I brought in my Pokemon stickers, which it was
Oh.
basically just like, do you remember these books? It was like a big, wasn't really a hardback because all the pages fell out. It was like really cheaply made,
Yeah.
but it was like you bought these packs of stickers, a bit similar to the cards, and you would just basically fill up each slot. I mean, God forbid trying to do like something like that, given the amount of Pokemon now, you would need like a you would need like a Bible size version. But yeah, it was like the original 151, and yeah, I think I filled up the majority of it. There were a couple. See, this is the thing. There was a couple I was missing, but it was so long ago that there was a thing at the back. It was like a forum you could fill out. Where
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
like, I'm missing this card, this card, this card, or this sticker. And it's like, oh yeah, you can send that in and we'll send you the stickers for money or something. And again, this is like long before the internet and things. And it's just, yeah, it's surreal.
In Glasgow, they were doing they would be meetups for the books, for the sticker cards and for the cards themselves, and people would go to like the supermarket. The supermarkets would arrange times and dates to turn up and trade cards. Like that was generally what supermarkets were doing. Never mind, that's how crazy it was. Like there was things not even affiliated with it. Like, by the way, come in here and you can trade cards. You can buy them while you trade them, and there's all this stuff. And, like that's how I just want to get that across because even the sticker book had such an impact on the UK.
Because I even remember one of there was this shopping centre years and years ago where I think it had just opened, and in one of the stores there, it was like really long ago, they were doing like events for like Pokemon cards. So it was like you could battle when they give you like a deck and everything, and you would just, fight with them. It wasn't great. It was quite boring. It kind of switched me off the game because, I mean, I think I was in a similar boat where I was more into the games.
Yeah.
Like they were a lot more engaging, and it was something that I could play on my own. I didn't have to like. I mean, I probably could have played the card game on my own, but I don't. It's not like solitaire. You can't like run from table to table and be like, I activate my Charizard. I activate my Pikachu. It's like it's not the same. Whereas the games you can just like flick it on, and my God, can we talk about the merch though? Like, because this is a question you asked in the Discord, when you said what is the weirdest piece of like merchandise you've got for Pokemon, and I was like thinking about it, and I was thinking, oh, I had the games, I had the plushes, the cards, the stickers. I even had like a bouncy ball that had like a Pokemon inside of it. It was really weird. But then also something I forgot was I had the marbles.
What?
Yeah.
Marbles?
I'm not even kidding. It was like normal marble. I'll need to see if I can dig them out. But yeah, they were like marbles, but with like Pokemon like prints on them. So it would be. I'll need to send you a picture of it. But it's like they would have like they'd have like the big marble that I'm assuming you flick the smaller marbles on. I don't know. I never really played marbles. I just had them because it was Pokemon. It was just like, yeah, I had that. Yeah, and they had like the big Pokeball that you could stick them in to like hold them. It was like massive. What else was there? There was the Burger King, the gold cards. Do you remember them?
Yeah, that was one I looked up today because
Yeah.
I was like, I was trying to remember what that was. Yeah, that was some pretty interesting stuff. That.
Yeah. I remember years ago watching a video on YouTube, and I feel sorry for him, but it was this like child, literally a child, like holding up like one of these Burger King golden things, going like into this potato camera, being like, "Oh hey YouTube, what's up? I think I found this solid gold bar." How much is it? It's like everyone in the chat's like, "Oh dear, I hate to admit it, but that is literally part of a Burger King kids meal. It's not going to be worth much." I mean, maybe nowadays, yeah, but not like, not the worth of gold.
No.
Even though it has the protective sleeve, although it did come with like a really cool Pokeball holder.
Yeah, it's
which
the Pokeball I could remember the most. That was the bit I
Yeah.
was remembering when I googled it. I was like, I remember the Pokeball, but I couldn't even remember what was in it. But it was the Pokeball I could remember.
Because I've still got that like sitting out in one of my rooms. It's like, is it really cool just having it out? But yeah, like those kind of things. I'm just trying to think what else.
I had some pretty weird stationery, just like rulers, just like rulers,
Oh
like
yeah.
so I had like what's the thing? Is it a compass you used to draw circles? I had one of those that was like thick yellow plastic with Pikachu on it, And it was
Ah,
like, that's a spike on the end of it. Like, what kind of merch is that?
yeah.
That Pokemon went, you know what? I'm gonna slap a sticker on that.
I mean, do you remember the toys you used to get where it was like the small plastic ones, but you could stick a pencil up them to
Yes.
like be a pencil topper? I swear to God, it's better than the way I'm like describing it here.
No, it's not. No, because that's the
Yeah.
thing. This is the incredible thing about Pokemon is it was a lot of it was just trash.
Oh yeah.
It was not better than you're describing it.
Okay, okay. I mean, it's a bit like so. If anyone listening to this has the misfortune of following me on Twitter, you'll have seen a picture that I posted about I think a couple of days ago, and basically I made a joke. It was like a before and after picture of me in lockdown, but it was like two separate Poliwhirl
Hmm.
figures. So Poliwhirl's a Pokemon. Sorry, just throwing that out there before like some person's listening to this going, "What the devil is a Poliwhirl?" So one of them is just like the regular mold, it's in a regular stance, and the other one is just this huge chunky boy with like a metal ball underneath it. And the idea was they made like these chunkier Pokemon toys where you just like rolled them into one another.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the aim was, whether you were supposed to knock them down or I genuinely don't know. All I remember was I brought them into school one day and they got taken away because I left them in the playground, and I had to go to I think it was the prefect or whoever it was of that year, like one of the older students, and I went into one of the classrooms and they were just sitting there and I had to take them back. But it was like, yeah, it was like that moment of, oh God, somebody stole them. But that's the thing though, like throughout that period of like the late 90s, early 2000s, Pokemon was just inescapable. And I'll give you one more example before we move on. I remember I went on a family holiday to, I think it was Gran Canaria. I could be wrong, but I'm convinced it was. And I remember we went by this market. And you know how markets in some places are like infamous for having like bootleg
Oh yeah.
things are popular of like pop culture, and one of them was they had these Pokemon cards, and I knew they were fake. I still wanted them for some weird reason, but I knew they were fake, and it was like they're a lot thinner, like in terms of when you're looking at them and you put them against the actual cards. They're a lot thinner. I'm convinced they're just a sticker, like a really shiny
Yeah.
holographic sticker, just slapped on like a really poorly printed back. Yeah, they were awful. But it just shows like everywhere you went, even when you went on holiday, just Pokemon was there. It
Yep.
was something that, yeah, it was just something you couldn't really escape. And I mean, fair play to them.
That's one thing that really fascinates me because it's not just like some phenomena are quite local,
Hmm.
be UK specific or US specific. Like
Hmm.
Pokemon is huge globally. And that always kind of bothered me because I was kind of like,
Hmm.
we chatted about like how it was so influential in our childhood in terms of the shows that it got picked up with as well and stuff. This was worldwide and their marketing is so good.
Hmm.
The Pokemon Company, that this is so easily a worldwide phenomenon with like seemingly by accident.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not by design. But you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it is everywhere. Like no matter where you went on holiday, no matter who you met, no matter where they were from,
Hmm.
like everyone was into Pokemon at that point.
Like they had a finger in every pie, didn't they? I mean,
Oh yeah.
they had music, they had anime, they had the games, they had bloody marbles, as I said. They had the card game,
They
they
had they
had
had a range of
stickers.
they had board games.
Oh, so they
They had
did,
like
yeah.
their own Pokemon Master board game things.
Hmm. Oh, I remember that. Are you thinking of the same video I'm thinking of there?
Maybe I can't remember. I actually had the game.
Oh, really?
Um,
Oh,
yeah, we played it like twice and I realized it was
no,
difficult,
didn't
so
hold
to
up.
speak. It was very difficult. No, it didn't hold up when we played it at the time.
Mm. Like there was even the books as well, wasn't there? Where it was just
Yeah, yep.
like really short recaps of the episodes, and it was like Ash was bored. I'm bored, and you're like, oh great, okay. This is the level of literature I have sunk into. But Nah, jokes aside, they were in everything, and as I said, it's this weird thing that just crept in out of nowhere. Because when I was like looking into this, I don't know like how big it was in Japan when it first came out. Like I've heard it was kind of moderately successful. Like it wasn't the same level. Like up until I think the anime came out, I think the games themselves were received all right, and that's why they
Yep.
put all their eggs into one basket when it came to Gen 2 with Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Where they just thought, oh, this is going to be our final game, let's, pour everything into this. And it was quite interesting. I remember, as we were saying, like the hype being huge, Pokemon being everywhere. And I remember there being hints about a second generation. Like, in the very first Pokemon film, they kind of teased other Pokemon.
Yep.
Like from other generations, but they never really addressed it. Like I remember one of the characters. Remember the character that replaces Brock in the anime, Tracy something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he just had like a marrow, the big blue mouse, and
Yeah.
nobody
Right.
addressed it. They were just like,
Right at the start of the movie, they fight Pikachu fights Donphan. Is it Donphan?
Don
I think
Fan,
it's
it
like
is,
the
yeah.
like right at the start of the film, and it's like, oh, this guy has a new Pokemon. Everyone's like, what?
Yeah.
That's not in the 151 poster that I have on my bedroom wall.
I mean, like, even if you look at the short that comes before the film, I think there's one where it's like you've got Snubble as well, and you've also got Togepi as
Togepi,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, which is just introduced and they never address it until until they get to Johto. And it's like, oh yeah, it's a Johto Pokemon. It's like, what? No. You can't just introduce a Pokemon and be like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. I'm sure we'll address it. A bit like the whole GS ball thing, but that's another topic for another day. Yeah, it was just weird, but I always remember the only reason I found out about Generation 2 was I was at the cinema and I can't remember what it was I saw, but the long and short of it was I went out and they used to have like these free postcards that you could take. I don't know why,
Hmm.
they don't do it anymore. Well, they haven't been in years, obviously, because of the lockdown, but they kind of stopped doing it. But I remember coming out as a child and looking at this like rack of postcards and being like, what is that weird creature saying, come battle with me, or, come explore Johto with me? I was like, what even is that? And I picked it up and it was like all of these like Gen 2 Pokemon on the front being like, oh look, Gen 2's here, the next wave of Pokemon. And it's like, oh my god. Mom.
It was it's funny you should say that because I remember almost nothing from the animation side for Gen 2. Like I was kind of going through trying to figure out where was my cutoff for Pokemon. Like where does Pokemania end? And I genuinely didn't see Pokemon 2000 in the cinema as far as I'm aware. And I
Really?
don't think I ever saw it till years later.
Wow.
And yeah, and I think I'm not the only one. Because if you ask like people so I'll quickly double back a wee bit. If you go on like Reddit or any sort of place with like a large Pokemon fan base, there's a term called a Gen 1er, and that's the people like us mostly
Yeah.
who played Gen 1, grew up with it, and refused to accept that the series got better after Gen 1. But the reason that's such a big thing is because I can name you probably all 151 Pokemon from the first gen, and my wife who's never played any of the games but just was part of the general consumer, she can probably name about 50 of them with like very little difficulty. She couldn't name a single Gen 2 one, and I could only name about 30 off the top of my head. Like compared to, like, there's so many like weird ones. I know there's only 100, but there's so many ones I just can't think of off the top of my head. Part of that might be the Pokemon rap, of course, but
I was going to
like,
say, did you not sing that to yourself when back in the day?
but like Gen 2 just kind of like by that point the magic was kind of gone. It's
Yeah.
such a weird drop off. The game, I stuck with the games for a long time till the end of the Game Boy Advance. But I think Gen 2 didn't actually do as good as Gen 1, and then it's kind of vanished a wee bit. But I'm skipping ahead a wee bit.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I was going to say, I have like very irrefutable evidence of me seeing Pokemon 2000 because upstairs I've got 2 Ancient Mew cards
Oh, nice.
sitting in the drawer. Yeah, so it's like that's my retirement fund, If streaming doesn't pan out, that's what I can fall back on. But yeah, it's like I think they gave out the Ancient Mews during that film, and I
Yep.
think I saw the third one. I'm sure I did. I can't remember. That was the one with Entei.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
And the unknown, which I liked worked well enough. Like, a lot of people say, oh, that's my favourite. And it's decent for Pokemon standard. It is decent. But then after that, I kind of dropped off. Because
Mm.
this is a weird thing. Like, I remember, as we've been saying, Pokemon in the late 90s, early 2000s, absolutely massive. You couldn't turn without, getting slapped by a Pikachu doll or something like that. The games, I'm in a similar boat. And I think a lot of people our age are very similar in the sense that they stuck with the games, but when it came to the anime, like we got through the Kanto and the Orange Islands, and then I think we all kind of got halfway through Johto, or like saw snippets of it,
Mm.
and then all of a sudden we just stopped watching it. Like, I honestly don't remember watching the end of the Johto series, because I remember apparently at the end of the Johto one, Ash goes to the league and he gets his ass kicked by a guy who's got a Blaziken, which is like a Gen 3 Pokemon, and I think that was at the time when Ruby and Sapphire were just about to come out in the West. And
Sure.
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't remember that at all from childhood, which makes me think that I probably didn't watch it up until that point. I kind of dropped it. And I think I mean, this is me speaking completely subjectively and anecdotally, but I feel personally it's a combination between being bombarded by too much of Pokemon, which I know sounds kind of ironic considering it's like the most, the highest grossing media franchise now. So they've obviously done something right. But it's the fact that like other shows tried to capitalise and pull people's attention away. As I said at the beginning, you had Yu-Gi-Oh! You had Beyblade, Digimon, and I mean there were just so many people kind of capitalising on that craze. But then again, see the 90s, I mean the amount of like crazes that we went through.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, do you remember, like, off topic, but do you remember things like Crazy Bones?
Yep. You
Yeah.
also mentioned you mentioned one offhand when we were chatting before of Crazy Frog. It was like
Oh,
different
yeah.
types of different ironic ringtones.
Hmm.
That was like early noughties. Don't even know what my ringtone on my phone is. It's been on silent for 6 years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that was
it
back
just
in the day when you needed, or not needed, but people wanted like a very obnoxious, loud
yeah,
tone.
yeah, custom ringtone.
Yeah.
Kind of to spin it back round though, back to
Hmm.
Pokemania. I do have a
Yeah.
question for you, and I've been thinking about this today. So if you do panic, throw it back to me. I do have
No,
an
go for
answer.
it.
Why Pokemon? So why not Digimon? Why not Yu-Gi-Oh? Why not Beyblade? Why not? I don't know what else was around that time. Like, why does Pokemon become so popular in your like? What's your thoughts on that? Why is it? Because it probably wasn't the first. If I'm right in my knowledge, Digimon actually comes out first.
Mhm.
So why do you think Pokemon was so successful?
I thought you were just going to end that sentence with why, and then that was it.
Why?
Why?
Why are we here?
Yeah.
Just to stuff. No. Why Pokemon?
I suppose it was just the. And again, this is me just saying, like, 5 minutes ago, oh, the saturation probably killed the mania. But I think it was because it was so inescapable. And everyone. I feel as if Pokemon is almost like that cup of tea, and a very British analogy, I know. But it's like, you know how when you make a cup of tea for someone just to. You don't necessarily have to make a cup of tea for someone, but you say, like, oh, let's go in and get some tea or coffee or whatever. It's just like a saying to, like, come for a chat. It feels as if Pokemon was kind of that thing for kids, where it was something that even if you were shy or you were, I mean, like, compared to me, like, little Satsu was a very socially awkward, not many friends, kind of shy person. But when it came to Pokemon, it almost felt as if there was like a unity.
Mhm.
Like, like every kid could be like, oh, I like Charizard. Oh, I like this or that. It was long before the days of, people complaining on message boards nowadays saying, well, the IV of Charizard is terrible. Like, it's long before that. It was just, there was no internet, or little internet. It was just you, the other kids, and just being able to bond over this kind of, just this real fantasy. And I mean, a lot of other series did do that. I mean, look at Dragon Ball. Like, you had kids not like punching one another, but like pretending and everything. I mean, you had that. You had Beyblade as well. It was just something that I think, considering the popularity of it through word of mouth and everything, considering the games at the time were really well made, and it gave you that sense of adventure. And I think the anime, although like we say nowadays it doesn't hold up, I think that it definitely helped to kind of foster that feeling, if you know what I mean, that feeling of wanting to know more about Pokemon.
Yep.
So it was like you would see Ash fight like a random, I don't know, Jigglypuff or Aerodactyl or like any Pokemon, and you would want to know more and be like, oh, they're a cool Pokemon. Like, I mean, how cool was Mewtwo in the film? As bad as that film was at points, like Mewtwo is still like a really cool idea, and it's one of my favorite Pokemon. I would say, even to
You touched on it. I was waiting for it. So this is why
I
this
fell
is
into your
my
trap
theory.
hard.
You fell into my you activated my trap card.
Yeah.
This is why I think Pokemon was as huge as it was. Part of it, like everything you said, is totally correct. But anything could have done that. Like why was it not Yu-Gi-Oh? They had a game, they had an anime. And the thing that I think is so special at Pokemon is that there's 151 different Pokemon out there for the first generation, and every one of them could have been someone's favorite. Like, even though the game, the anime, we all experienced it the same, we all had different output from it. And I think that's something that, I don't know how to word this, but I think it's something that's extremely special, that even though the experience is the same for everyone, it's also kind of unique. So, like, I'm sure you probably drew up a team of 6 Pokemon. I drew up a team of 6 Pokemon, probably totally different from yours. Everyone's got a favorite Pokemon. I actually did some notes for this episode, and I was going to try and make a joke here, like, oh man, something's, everyone's got a favorite Pokemon. Can't believe someone's favorite Pokemon would be Grimer or whatever. And I couldn't think of a single Pokemon that someone probably doesn't like. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like every Pokemon is probably someone's favorite from, especially from Gen 1, because there's so few. And I think that's part of the thing that really makes Pokemania so crazy, is like everyone has this kind of unique experience with Pokemon because of what they loved from it. There was something in there for everyone. If you like cute little plant Pokemon, you like the big scary dragon, you like the almost godly power created by man that hates himself and all life in the universe, you got Mewtwo, and you've got this incredible spread of Pokemon. I think that is part of the big reason for me that why it's so huge, is that everyone can personally connect it in some way.
I think one of the interesting things I actually read about it was, and I mean, even like to this day, we're still getting like leaks of the beta for Pokemon, like for Gold and Silver, and some of the designs, I have to admit, are amazing. It's a shame that they never got fully realised. But apparently for Red and Blue, or Red and Green over in Japan, apparently there was a lot of debate as to whether or not they should keep the like cute Pokemon. Because they were like, oh, our Western audience is gonna like respond well to, having cute monsters and things when we were all gritty and all of this rubbish. Like it was all about marketing, but they were like, are people gonna respond well to that? And it's like, well, yeah, as you said, it's like there's something for everyone in Pokemon. I mean, one of my favourites, although at the time it wasn't really one of my favourites, I think my favourites just constituted as what was useful, if you know what I mean. So I was like, yeah, Blastoise is great because it's got cannons and it's like really, it can learn Earthquake or something. Or, I like, Mewtwo because it's really strong. Whereas nowadays I'm like, yeah, no shame, I love Porygon or Farfetch'd because it's literally just a duck that holds a leek.
That's exactly what That's exactly what I think is the great thing, that you liked them because of how they were in the game. One of my favorite Pokemon is Kingler, the evolution of Krabby, which, as far as I'm aware, is trash in the games.
Yeah.
But there's a great episode of the anime where Ash has to use a Krabby. In a fight that he's never used before and it's never been out in battle, and then halfway through the battle it evolves into Kingler, and like the whole anime's based on this whole episode's based on just one Kingler, and I was like, that cemented as being one of my favorite Pokemon forever. And it's like, that's trash. But like that memory, that personal connection is so strong. The reason that you've picked your 6 favorite Pokemon would be so entirely different from what I picked. I think that's just such a fascinating part of it.
Yeah, it's like that whole lightning in a bottle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like somehow they've just nailed it down. And I mean, it's weird to think that this all started because the creator, I think his name's Satoshi Tajiri. Oops, apologies if I butcher that name. But he was really into bug collecting, and I don't know whether or not that was like a pastime for like certain people in Japan, like whether they lived in the countryside or not, but it seemed to be something that he was really into and he wanted to share that through like a game. And it's weird how that hobby is just suddenly evolved into this multi-million or multi-billion even franchise that we still talk about 25 years today. absolutely insane. But definitely, the craze of Pokemania was at its peak by the 90s. And I think the early 2000s, definitely. I think things started. So here's a question for you. Getting you back for earlier. When did you think the mania kind of started to die out? Because I've got kind of a theory, like this is all personal, but I've got a kind of theory about why it might have started to kind of peter out. But
Yeah,
like when and why do you think it started to kind of flatline, or not flatline, but drop?
I think there's a few. So I think I went and had a look at the cinema entry for
Right.
Pokemon Silver. For the first Pokemon movie, does insane numbers, and but by Pokemon 2000, the numbers is actually it's still good numbers for an opening film, but it's quite low, like compared to the first one. And then by the time the third film comes out, it's probably half what it was for the second film. And then I think you were saying the fourth one didn't even make it to cinema.
So I thought that as well, but apparently, and I don't know if this is a fact, but I think it might have, but it was a limited release if it was.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It might have been, but yeah, it's not the same as like having it in the opening week as, the first three films.
So a couple of theories. Theory one is there would had to be some kind of break when they made the Johto episodes of Pokemon, because you mentioned making it halfway through the Johto ones. I don't remember it at all, Johto, and I only barely remember Orange Island. Like I knew the characters to look at, but I couldn't tell you any of the stories. And then I think the other big thing was the switch from the Game Boy Color to the Game Boy Advance for the games, because I a lot of my friends didn't get a Game Boy Advance, and even fewer got a DS. So you know what I mean? You've got the Game Boy Color was such a huge craze. Game Boy Advance, let's say it sells 90% as well, and then let's say the DS sells. I'm making these numbers up, obviously, but the
Yeah,
point
yeah,
is,
yeah.
the further down you go, the less people. And handheld game that was the DS with gangbusters over the years. But at the time, I think people just kind of lost their accessibility to it. I never got tired of Pokemon. It just I couldn't afford a DS. So I just never played it. Like, that was it. Just
Yeah.
moved away from me, rather than me moving away from it.
I'm glad,
That's kind of my guesses. So I'm curious to what you've got.
See, I'm glad you brought that up, just about the Game Boy Advance, because I was thinking the same thing. Because when Sapphire and Ruby came out, there was a huge, like, accessibility issue. So basically, as you know, like in Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, and Gold, Silver, and Crystal, you could use like a link cable to basically to trade your Pokemon over. And obviously, there was accessibility issues there. Like you couldn't transfer a Generation 2 Pokemon to Generation 1, but you could transfer like Gen 1 Pokemon. You could still have that
Yeah.
connectability essentially to transfer your old Pokemon from Gen 1 to 2. But then there was like a link that was like completely severed. Like you could not transfer Gen 1 or 2 Pokemon onto like Gen 3 onwards. And it's not until recently where I think it was a couple of years ago they brought out Generation 1 and 2 for the Virtual Console on the 3DS, that technically you can trade those Pokemon on, but you can trade them through, it's like Pokemon Home or whatever it's called
Yeah, yeah.
and things. But back then, when Pokemon was at its height, and then they bring out this new technology, I think that definitely affected it. That there was this kind of, like, I mean, I can see why from a technical level. The reason, obviously, being that, it's like it's different hardware, and I think it probably would have been a harder job trying to make it backwards compatible with the other games and the other hardware and things like that. Yeah, I mean, between that and I think the other thing was just that we were getting older. And this is going to sound really weird and edgy, but it's like, how when we were becoming teenagers and a lot of people were moving away from games like Pokemon? Because I know I did. Like, when I was a teenager, I still thought, like, I still had, like, a soft spot for Pokemon, but I would still kind of think that, okay, maybe it's time I move on. I'm, getting older, I should be playing. And this is a stupid mindset, but it's like my mindset as a teenager. I should be playing more mature games. That way where it's like it's a silly thing to think, like looking back, but at the time it made total sense.
Oh, yeah.
To
And
stop playing.
your friends are
Yeah,
moving on as well, and you have to
yeah,
find common ground to talk about. Like you were talking about Pokemon before being the common ground, when it's no longer the common ground, and you've lost a big reason for playing those games.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's like you go from talking. This is the weird thing because like you go from talking about Pokemon for God knows how long, like years and years of your childhood, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, did you see the new Halo game? Did you see the new, Fallout? It's like
Yeah.
just that total shift of one genre to the other. I have to admit, like, I strayed away for a while. Like, I got into FPS games a lot more during that time. And I remember I did pre-order Pokemon Sapphire. I wasn't a big... I mean, I liked it, but compared to the other ones, I
Mm.
mean, Pokemon Silver is by far, I have a real soft spot for it
Yep.
because I don't remember why I got Pokemon Yellow. Like, I genuinely don't remember asking for it. I just remember it being there, and that was it. And then playing it on, like, I actually played it in the N64 as well because you could play it on Pokemon Stadium, and there was like a mode where if you had an adapter for your controller, you could stick it in the bottom of it and you could play Game Boy games through it. It was really cool.
That was cool.
But I remember playing it through that and everything, and absolutely loved the game. When it came to that, there were less people playing Pokemon, so it was like I was kind of playing it on my own again, kind of like going into personal territory here. But when I was younger, I was a lot more reserved and shy. I'm still a shy person in real life, but more so back then. So I'm not like a person who would openly confess like a lot of interests. I wouldn't be like, hey, did you catch a new Pokemon series, chap? I wouldn't be going up to random people. I know there are some people who do that or who are able to do that, but for me, that was just like, I couldn't do that. I was just like, no, this is. It's like, no,
Yeah.
no, no, I'll just take my Pokemon and just, be silent in the corner. But as soon as Diamond and Pearl rolled around, again, it was that idea of I didn't get it at release. I think I got it a few years later. And funny enough, I actually didn't realise that there was a remake of the first generation. So Fire Red and Leaf Green in
Yep.
Generation 3. Like, I honestly didn't know that was a thing. The only reason I found out about it was a lot of people had the ROMs that they were hacking to
Oh
make their
yeah,
own,
yeah.
like, series. So it would be like Pokemon Legend of Water or Fire or whatever. That used to be really popular, where they would just choose, like, a Pokemon type. And they would be
Yeah.
like the Pokemon master of that type. And it would just be really... It was on... Some of them were hilarious because they would be like Dragon Ball Z ripoffs. But like the punching animations would essentially be them walking into like in the games when you walk into someone, but it's just a wee tiny hands going from side to side.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and you would get like people commenting at the time being like, this is sick, this is cool, and probably was at the time, but that's how much I was dropping from the series, because you would think like if I was like a huge fan at the time, I would have picked up on that and followed the news, but I just fell completely away from Pokemon. And I
Yeah.
did technically come back to it slowly. Like I bought the games kind of after they came out. Like I bought Diamond, didn't like it at all. I'm gonna be honest, I am not one of those people that like is excited for Gen 4. Sorry. Like I think that's when my interest started waning in the series and I thought maybe I should just give it a buy. And then I played Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and that kind of reignited my passion for it. But that's the thing though, it's like that, like backtracking, it's going back to that idea of it's just growing up really, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think it's interesting because I think we both had some experience when you talk about sort of playing Ruby and Sapphire and realizing you're the only one left playing it. I think I had the same kind of thing. It's not just growing up in the sense of like people are growing up, they don't play the games, but it's just like I think we actually held on to the games longer than a lot of people did. Like a lot
Oh
of my
yeah.
friends didn't play Silver, never mind Fire Red and Leaf Green and Ruby and Sapphire. So like I even think not just growing up, but I think Pokemon grew old. Uh, in the sense of it was so huge, and then not that they could have. I still will argue with people for the rest of my life that Silver and Gold and then later Crystal is the greatest set of sequels ever made
Oh yeah.
for really any game. In terms of like actually being a sequel, not counting Persona 5 in that.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure the Hollow Knight sequel will knock it off the perch, but that's going to be one to look back on. But my point is like even by then, like the idea got kind of old. I think they never
Yeah.
really managed to progress the idea, and you could see what they were trying to do with like things like Pokemon Snap, Colosseum, those pinball games. They were trying to diversify it and try get people in through different means. But I think the games they were always going to have a short shelf life because of how samey they are and how big some of these games were. Because I think I'm not sure on the exact timeline, but I imagine Silver and Gold doesn't roll around till like 2002 in the UK, or
Yeah.
2001 at least. So like
It must have been,
it's
yeah.
been years after Yellow hits in 2000s. You know what I mean? So anything. Time is the hardest thing. The hardest thing is to stay relevant,
Yeah.
basically.
I mean, there's only so much you can do with the franchise. And I mean, that's what people keep complaining about. They keep saying, oh, Pokemon should do like this or that. But I mean, on the one hand, it's like, yeah, they do have room that they could take a risk and be creative. Like they have done for other games. Like, I mean, Colosseum's probably a bad example. Pokemon Snap, let's say.
Mystery Dungeon.
Mystery Dungeon as well, yeah, that's a great one. But it's like, at the same time, Pokemon is like such a safe franchise. Like, as you were saying before, it's a franchise that has something for everyone, you know, in terms of like, and I mean, I have to admit, like, when we were growing up, the tagline for Pokemon was, gotta catch 'em all. And that is honestly the most shameless, I think, like marketing tool I think I've ever seen. And it is right though. They were just like, oh yeah, you gotta catch, you know, Pikachu, you gotta catch Rhydon, you gotta catch this or that. Yeah, it's like now it's like, oh, the power of friendship. Because it's like what 900 bordering on 1,000 Pokemon or something like that, and you're just like, oh no, no, we're not catching them all. Even though there is something for everyone, it's probably Nintendo just playing it safe. Or not Nintendo, sorry, Game Freak, playing it safe to be inclusive of, you know, like getting new audiences in and getting old. Because I think I've said this before, but I remember some of the people that I've worked with who have, you know, they've got children, and it's weird to see them talk about how their children are into Pokemon. And I think I told you this one about the woman who pulled out a card from her bag, and it was like a Lapras card. Like the way she described it was what was it I said to you, was it a turtle dinosaur
Dinosaur Swan, I think.
Swan, aye, it's like turtle, dinosaur, swan, something. It was just like really bizarre. And then another person like saying, "Oh, my son or daughter wants this or that," and you're like this particular Pokemon, but it was like from one of the newer generations. So it's weird to see it from that perspective. You know, it's weird. It's like as a kid, you just get so lost in this huge world of Pokemon, and you know, you want to play the games, you want to be the very best and all of that, but then as soon as you become an adult, and it's almost like you're looking from the outside in, and you're like, oh no.
I think one of the best comparisons maybe to make is what our parents must have thought about Star Wars, and probably what actually our generation thinks of Star Wars as well, actually, and to a certain extent. So you've got the big mania happens in our parents' earlier years, and then it gets rebooted, brought back out for our generation, and it's terrible in their eyes. But our generation, I've never spoken to anyone who doesn't kind of love Phantom Menace, or doesn't kind of love Attack of the Clones, or doesn't kind of love what like, and they're trash films. Like they are so bad, but we love them. And then obviously, the Disney films have came out, and people hate them. And there'll be kids all around the world who think the Disney films are the greatest films ever. And in 20 years' time, they'll say that Rise of Skywalker is the greatest film ever made. And I think like Pokemon's that now for us, like as well. So like we obviously love Gen 1, and there's kids now getting hooked on Sword and Shield, despite people always being like, oh man, these games aren't as good as they used to be. And yeah, it's a shame there's not all the Pokemon in it. But at the same time, it's not for us anymore. Like we're the adults now, and Pokemon's going to always be for kids. And I know they're doing things like Pokemon Legends, which is kind of aiming at different people, but it's for kids. And it's really, I think there's a really fascinating thing I'd really like to know more about, just like how much do parents influence purchasing things for Pokemon? Because there's obviously a certain nostalgia that we have, and that would make it easier for a parent to buy a kid something, you know what I mean? Like you're going to buy a kid a Pikachu toy, you're like, oh, like, Pikachu, I know him.
Yeah.
Or like going to see Detective Pikachu in the cinema, or
Guilty.
you know, yeah, I love that film as well.
Always good.
Ryan Reynolds is great.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm getting at? Like, I'm really
yeah.
curious about like what effect does this next generation have? And then, you know, Pokemon. I don't think Pokemon's ever going to go away now. I think it's always going to exist in some form. Pokemon Go, I think, solidified. Maybe not Pokemania, but like, I don't know what the next level down is going to be. Like, Poke always existing forever.
More like a Poke Renaissance, isn't it?
Yes, but like they've nailed it now, where it will never go away.
Yeah.
In the same way that Star Wars will never go away now. No matter how hard I asked it to leave my house, it doesn't leave. And like that will be it for Pokemon. And I think, like you say, it's strange to see it as from an adult point of view now, seeing these kids into it. But there's going to be kids out there who think Sword and Shield are the greatest games ever made. And you know, whatever next gen is that everyone hates,
Yeah.
Some kid will say it's the greatest thing ever made. I
Mm.
mentioned at the start, there's 151 Pokemon, and every one of them someone's favorites. There's 1,000 Pokemon now, and apart from Unknown Q, I imagine every Pokemon's someone's favorites.
Did you say unknown Q?
Yeah, I was just trying to think of like the worst Pokemon I could think of. Unknown Q was the
Yeah.
first one that came to mind. I was either thinking that or Delibird, but Delibird has the present thing, which is kind of funny. And I know
Yeah.
someone will like Delibird.
Yeah.
So if you like Unknown Q as your favorite Pokemon, let me know, and I will,
Yeah. Let me know
I
as
will
well.
apologize.
Let me know as
If
well
you can
because
explain it.
I'm very curious to know if anybody likes unknown Q or unknown any unknown. It is interesting though. Like I honestly, I've kind of ranted to you about this before, but like see going back to the card game, there has been this kind of revival of like as you said there's been this revival of interest in Pokemon. Like I think it did kick off with Pokemon Go, and then it was more to do with like the games as well kept coming out, and they
Yep.
kept cashing in the nostalgia, because it's quite interesting to see how much nostalgia is in the new games. Like if you look at Pokemon X and Y, relatively I remember playing them for the first time. I am not a big fan of them. I just think they're boring and they're not well optimized. But the selling point for them was they introduced a thing called Mega Evolutions that were
Oh yeah.
mainly centered. I love Mega Evolutions, so I'm guilty of this, but they focused it more on the Gen 1 Pokemon. So like
Yep.
Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, Mewtwo as well. In fact, Charizard got two of them, so did Mewtwo. Like they did have other Pokemon, but it was mainly Gen 2, sorry, Gen 1. And then when you go to the next game for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, that's cashing in on the nostalgia of people wanting a remake
Yeah.
of the Hoenn games. So again, it's capitalizing on that, and it's this like cycle of nostalgia. But one of the things, as I was saying there about ranting, because we can't keep this too positive. We're gonna bring some salt into the side, is the idea of people like, there's this wave now of people buying Pokemon cards. And I don't know, I get quite irked by it. Like I understand why people are buying them. They're buying them to like sell them on, aren't they? Or am
Yep.
I like getting that wrong? Yeah, because I definitely like not buying it to play the meta game. you know, and the amount of posts I've seen like on Insta or Twitter where it's like these sealed cards and things, and they've got them all signed, and oh look, I've got like 200. You get these really obnoxious videos as well of people like doing stupid stuff, like basically blending a Pokemon pack and being like, oh, I hope it's not like a shiny, I don't know, like Pikachu or something like that. I hope it's not, because it's like over God knows how much money. And I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, Pokemon is a thing. It's all about the money. As was said, it's the biggest like multimedia franchise ever. I don't know. It's weird seeing like adults just go out, and I'm not like bashing anyone for doing it. Like if you want to do that, you do you. But it's weird to see that people are kind of prioritizing the money aspect rather than like collecting or having fun. Like I remember seeing another video of just this kid's like opening the pack. So usually, when you get these pack videos where it's like they're going through the cards, and then
Yep.
they'll have like a massive freak out and be like, "Oh, I got a shiny Charizard or whatever." And there was this kid's like opening them in one of these videos. It's like, duh, 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 duh. Oh, a shiny Pikachu, which is worth like a lot of money, but he just didn't care because he went to the next card and
Mhm.
he's like, "Oh, a water card." It's like there's just this generic, like energy card, and that's the thing though. It's like that kind of innocence and actually enjoying
Mhm.
the content, if you know what I mean. Obviously, it's all to sell it. What do you think of that?
Uh,
Like,
I get what you're getting at. It's one of those things
yeah,
that I just try to avoid stuff like
yeah,
that on social media, if I'm honest. So like, I
yeah,
haven't probably haven't been exposed to nearly as much to that as you have.
yeah.
But now people have always been collecting things and paying obscene money for things.
Oh,
It is kind of sucky, but it's like something that you love. But it's the thing that's always put me off getting into any kind of deck building card game. I wanted to get into Magic the Gathering for a while. So I googled like how to make a deck in Magic the Gathering
oh
for
Jesus.
like for like tournament play.
Yeah.
And turns out Magic the Gathering players are rich. That
Oh
was
yeah.
a that was an unexpectedly very middle class game. Like, was not expecting that.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, I'm not surprised to hear about Pokemon. Like it's so huge, and especially because so many of the cards and stuff we've played with and wrecked. as kids, I've got
Yeah.
Pokemon cards in my parents' loft
Hmm.
that are trashed. In terms of sellability, or whatever you'd call it, they all get
Yeah.
ratings and stuff, don't they?
Oh
They're
yeah.
in a binder, and I'll probably go look at them and have a nice wee night one night with
Hmm.
just going through them, just kind of having that nostalgia for them. But
Hmm.
I'll never be able to sell them because they're just not sealed up. So yeah, I kind of not don't really. I don't know. I get where you're coming from, but
Yeah.
and it is a shame. But we still got our memories, so
Oh yeah, yeah,
let's keep them.
absolutely. I think I'm just like too nostalgic of a person to be like that. Like, I mean, I even hang on to like sometimes I see listings online for like old consoles, and I'm just
Mhm.
like looking at them like, what's your story? How have you come to this place? Because honestly, I wouldn't say I'm a hoarder, but yeah, I'm a nostalgic hoarder in terms of like things that like I've had so many memories of. Like I'm not willing to kind of bin them
Fair.
and things. But yeah, no, I totally get what you mean. But actually, speaking of memories and things, we actually got a few just interesting experiences that a couple of our viewers submitted for tonight. Just basically sharing their own kind of experiences and their I think merch as well
Yeah.
came into it.
Oh, love a bit of merch.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So Green Shield had submitted one on the Discord saying that he had a very faded pair of Pokemon pajamas that he had kept for sentimental reasons. He had also got a terrible Pikachu alarm clock that they got from a pop-up vendor in Malaysia.
Love it.
I'm not surprised that was a thing. Like,
It's the
I'm
kind
a,
of thing that the batteries melt in within like a day, don't they? And
yeah.
it just does not work.
I bet you it's like you press it and it's like Digimon sounds that come out.
We had in my house we had a Bart Simpson one, a bootleg Bart Simpson alarm clock, and it
Oh,
was just so obviously some guy's kid doing a Bart Simpson impression.
is it like that episode of The Simpsons where it's like, "Don't have a cow, mother"?
Yes, exactly. It was pretty
Yeah.
much exactly that. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good. So he's also said, I currently have a Squirtle from Build-A-Bear that's amazing. I
Oh,
tried to get when I was in America a couple of years ago, I tried getting the Bulbasaur one, but they didn't sell it, so I ended up just buying a plush in one of the game stores instead. Yeah. In fact, sorry, before I finish Green Shield's thing, what was your starter for Pokemon?
Ooh.
Because I actually didn't ask this, and I feel as if it's very important to
It's who I
establish.
am as a person.
Yeah.
I feel like it's always Bulbasaur for me.
Hmm.
I feel like he's got the charm,
Hmm.
he's got the vine whip,
Oh
he's
yeah.
got the fact he becomes uglier as he gets older, like me. Um, so yeah, it's just an all-round relatable good workhorse is
Hmm.
Bulbasaur. And he's just there anyway till I get Snorlax and then just wreck the game with him anyway. So
Yeah, you just throw him to the side, like, move,
yeah,
bitch. Yeah, no, I would agree with Bulbasaur. Because this is the thing, and I think it'll probably be the same if your first game was Pokemon Yellow.
yep,
Because my first starter was, of course, Pikachu. So you know how people say, oh, what was your first
yeah,
starter? Was it Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle? And it's like, well, it was Pikachu because I had that game and I didn't get a choice. Because you end up getting all three anyway. If I had
yep.
to choose now, I would say Bulbasaur. They're all cool starters though, but my like first choice, the first game that I played where I actually had a choice was Pokemon Silver,
Mm.
and I chose Totodile, which I still stand by that
Oh.
he is the best of that
Um,
generation.
I'm more of a Cyndaquil
Oh,
guy, if I'm honest, at
do
that
you know?
point.
It's funny because it's always either Cyndaquil or Totodile. It's
I
never
I think I,
Chikorita.
I actually played a game as Chikorita. I went back
Yeah,
and played Pokemon Silver not too long ago and played it as Chikorita, and that
tough.
was tough going,
Yeah,
tough going, man. These
yeah.
games want you to grind.
Oh yeah, he gets like raked in the first couple of gyms because you've got a flying gym, you've got a bug
Yep.
gym, like all ones that he is very weak against. So it's like, yeah, he is not getting up from that. So yeah, like Totodile was definitely my first like choice. But if I had to choose, yeah, I would agree with that. Bulbasaur is definitely the most aesthetically pleasing.
Mm.
And I'm not just saying that because I've got like a vinyl statue of Bulbasaur sitting right across from me just now, staring. Like, go on, tell them.
Tell them. I've got a question for you actually, Sansa, and
Yeah,
I
go
don't
for it.
know. I might be landing myself in here because I can't remember if it's you or not.
Hmm.
I came home from I went to New York a few years ago and went to the Nintendo store there, and I picked up two copies of the Pokemon Cookbook
Yep, it's me.
Okay, that's fine. I was like,
Yeah,
I knew I'd given him. I could have sworn
yeah,
it was you, but you know that way, like as soon as you go live, and I'm like,
yeah.
I'm gonna be like, oh, I gave you that book, and you're like, never heard of it, don't know who you are.
No.
Okay, do you want to tell them about the Pokemon cookbooks? That is kind of weird. I just wanted to bring it up. Actually, I'll just keep
Yeah, no,
going.
no, go for it.
Basically, there's this cookbook that I picked up in the Nintendo store in New York, and it's like the Pokemon cookbook. It's not about cooking Pokemon.
Yeah.
I'll put out this now, but it's like this weird set of recipes that range from like
Mhm.
beans on toast to like Michelin star, like extremely complex sushi.
Yeah.
It was a fascinating read. So I gave it to Sats and one of my other friends, and was just like, Have you ever made anything out of it?"
Not yet. Like, I keep going. I honestly keep going to make something, and then I get put off when it's like, yes, you'll need one thing of rice, okay, and a gallon of seaweed. Gallon of seaweed, that's enough cooking for one day. I'm like, what the? I can't even remember what, because I really want to make the Pikachu, like the, I can't even remember what you call them, but you know, like the rice mold.
Mm.
But I'm. See, this is the thing. Like, I really want to make it, but at the same time, I'm like worried about like smearing my hands over like all this rice and being like, okay, it's ready. You know,
There's
I'm like,
also
oh,
there's also one that's like the Diglett Field or something. It's like
oh,
mashed potato with little hot dogs sticking out of
oh yeah,
it.
yeah. It's. I mean, they're creative. Don't get me wrong, they
Mm.
are creative. But it's like it's you know that way where you see ones that are like a masterclass of cooking and they're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
really intricate and things, and then you make it and it's like I will never take a picture of this. I will just eat it in shame, in silence, and just that is it.
Right.
But actually, speaking of very weird circumstances, Greenchill finishes by saying, Satsu also got me a Growlithe plush, which is true, and I'll tell you that in a minute. And I have an Eevee Funko Pop. Yeah, have
Ooh.
I told you the story about the Growlithe plushie?
No, don't think you have.
So, basically, because Green Shield is in Canada, and I am not, spoilers, one Christmas I decided to send over a parcel to him. So I was in one of the supermarkets and I was walking around and I was just getting like, you know, snacks and things to send over. And then out the corner of my eye, I spotted this, it was like this, like the toy section essentially, and it was this plushie of, Growlithe. And I
Mm.
remembered him saying ages ago, oh, he really liked Growlithe. So I thought, okay, that might be a funny thing just to shove in. So so I went to buy it. And when I went to the like front of the queue, guess what did not have a tag on it? The Growlithe. And the guy kept saying things like, oh, where did you get it? And I'm like, I got it off the shelf next to the other ones. Oh, I don't even know if this is like some random child's one, and I'm like, no. I'm like, no, we are not entering this territory. And I'm looking behind me, and there's all these people like building up behind me in the queue, and I'm like, honestly, I was on the edge to be like, you know what, just take it back, just get rid of it, don't hold up the queue anymore. And like, there was an old woman behind me, and she was joking. She had like a really good sense of humor about it. She was like, "Oh, just give him it for free, then." You know, the stereotypical.
That's a classic. Having worked
Yeah,
in a
the
shop for
classic.
many years, that's a
Yeah,
classic.
yeah. But the guy just looked at her and then looked at me and then was just like, "Yeah, I need to go get someone." I'm like, "Oh, it took ages to actually get it."
Was
I've
the
got.
someone they got was someone they got Professor Oak? Like who was it?
I have
Was it
no
the
idea.
manager?
No, I think it was just I random like
Oh,
looked it up on the computer and was
Gio-
like, "Oh, it was like,
Giovanni.
yeah, it was like, oh, it's so much," and I was like, I mean, you could have done me a favour and put it through if it didn't have a tag, but I'm like, you know, it's like the Team Rocket and me just like, I will remember this. I will be back for the rest of your plushes. Although then again, I had a very childish moment. I think it was in my local superstore, or not superstore, supermarket, and I walked by the toys, and then I had to like moonwalk back because I saw they did a Totodile one, and I was like, hold the phone, and I just grabbed it, and I'm like looking around thinking, okay, Satsu, if they stop you, you're buying it for a nephew, son, child. It's like, you're definitely not buying it for yourself.
I had that once with my Snorlax plushie that I've got,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
the woman at the counter was like, "Oh, who are you buying this for?" And I was like, honestly, me." And then I just had to like, I had no backup. I was not
Yeah.
ready, so I just had to take it on the chin. She was like, "All right, that's nice."
She was clearly a Digimon fan, I think.
Obviously more of a
Oh
Yu-Gi-Oh
yeah.
chap.
I mean, to be fair, the spiky hair on the dual disc probably gave you.
Yeah.
It's time to do. Oh, you're a Pokemon fan. Ew.
It's time to pay my credit card. Is more or less what it was.
You've activated my trap card. Wait, there's no card here. Oh, goddamn. So yeah, the next person that sent in just some memories was Wonko. So he said, I have a couple of decks from the heyday of the card game, some miniatures that for the most part get incorporated into the Christmas crib each year. That's amazing. The baby Pikachu. And he says, I had the original Pokedex book that was my pride and joy until it got stolen from my bag during lunch break at school. What is it with people stealing cards and stickers? What is it with these, like, utter deviants of society?
It shows you how important Pokemon was to people that they're willing to break the law.
Yeah. I mean, we've already established that we had a gambling ring. You know, people getting... I wouldn't say it went as far as getting mugged, but petty theft was definitely a thing. Like, I refuse to believe that someone didn't have some bad experience of losing a card or something, or a toy or something of Pokemon. I would like to be optimistic and be like, nowadays it's fine, but we don't know that. We don't...
No.
But yeah, that is a huge F for that. Yeah, moving. Yeah. And the last one is Jules, who has said, my first game was Pokemon Blue. I wasn't good at the game, but I loved the game, loved Squirtle, and loved watching the anime. I think that is like... It is either the anime or the games, isn't it?
Yeah.
That are like the gateway, like into this into the spiral of Pokemania.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny though because like I was talking about watching the show back, and it's funny like some of the moments are so clear. Just when you mentioned Squirtle and the anime, I was just like, oh yeah, Squirtle scored, of course. And it's like it's so funny. Like I think the games hold up better, but actually the show provided such vivid memories still. So yeah, those two, the combination of those two is what makes all these great memories.
I mean, it's iconic as well, though, isn't it? Like, I mean, for the anime, you know, it's like, as you said, the Squirtle Squad and, like, even Charizard, you know, and it was those kind of things that you saw in the anime, and then you were like, I want to do that in the game. Yeah. And then, yeah, I learned the hard way that the anime logic does not translate well into the games.
Come on, Pikachu, you can beat that Onyx. Come on.
Yeah, I will give you an example right now. So that actually did happen to me. I fought Brock against I fought Brock using Pikachu, and yeah, I got my arse kicked so many times, and I kept like thinking as a child, being like, "Come on, Pikachu, I believe in you." Yeah, he was just like, it's like, you know that scene at the Avengers where you know where Loki just gets like slammed everywhere by the Hulk. Yeah, it's just like that with Pikachu, and Onyx is just like getting smacked over and over again. It was like, yeah, the game wants me to grind, but
the problem was when you were catching your Pokemon, you didn't hold down B, the down key, and turn the Game Boy Color upside down. And if you'd done that, they would have been better.
Yeah, I mean that was just mistake number one, wasn't it?
100%.
Yeah, never again.
Much harder now with bigger pieces of equipment. You know, I have to get the Switch out and tip the whole TV upside down. It's a nightmare.
Do you know, fun fact, there actually is a Pokemon that
I do know that,
yeah. It's like, I can't remember if it's the 3DS. I think it might be both, but I think it's either the 3DS or the Switch, where you have to hold it upside down to evolve them. And I remember someone saying that, and I was like, okay, this is... someone's pulling my leg here. There is no way this is real. And then I did it, and it worked, and I'm like... What the actual hell? How could anyone figure this out? It's like, there is no way. That is the thing, though. Like, I think I've talked about this before, but you know the Mew glitch? Where it's like, basically, like, long story short, you can exploit the game to generate an encounter with Mew. And I always remember reading about this and being like, aye, sure. And this was like years and years later after I'd played, I'd first started playing Pokemon, and I looked it up online. I was like, yeah, sure, this doesn't exist at all. And out of curiosity, I tried it. I thought, what's the worst that could happen? And it actually worked. And I was like, how do people figure this out? Like,
It was funny because I always remember at school because we had yellow where they'd patched a lot of it.
yeah.
But there was also people going on about the rare candy cheat.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
in red and blue, and that's actually relatively easy to do. Like the Mew one's a bit more specific, but the rare candy one's not impossible. It's the same basic structure. You're rewriting the game as it goes along. You basically have to set up things in the right order, and yeah, you end up with 99 rare candies out of it. And it's just like it's such a that was famous. Just talking about things that were famous, but like that was like such a famous glitch
Yeah.
that people were just doing. It was like the first. I think it's probably the first glitch I knew of as a kid. Like didn't know it as a glitch. I just knew it as something weird that you could do.
Oh,
So that's very interesting.
there was honestly tons of glitches for the old games though. Like, and I think that is a thing, kind of loosely linking back to Pokemania, but it's something I think that definitely held the popularity
Oh yeah.
of it. That even if you thought you bet the game, like someone would come in the next day and be like, "Oh, I've found this new glitch or I found this new like exploit." Like one of them I remember vividly was Pokemon Silver, where you could do a duplicate glitch. And it's like you had to turn off your game when you were like transferring
Yeah.
Pokemon from one PC to the other or something, and it meant you could get like two of the same Pokemon, and you just kept like doing it over and over again. But another one of the weirder glitches that I remember was being able to change the color palette of your character. I've ever told you this one of
Yeah. Yeah.
the crystal one, yeah. So just to kind of like quickly explain, it's in Pokemon Crystal. You can choose to play as a boy or girl, and the girl is in a blue color scheme, and the boy's in the red. But I can't remember what you do. But you do like I think it's similar where you turn it off just as you're saving, and then you start a new game. And for some reason, the game switches the colors around. So you can play as a boy in blue or a girl in red. I don't know. It's like it's one of those weird ones where you're just like, how did again, how did people discover this, and B, like how did this like keep the franchise going? You know, it's like it's nothing game breaking, but it was just those kind of secrets and things that people wanted to know more about
Yeah.
Pokemon and this world that they thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna play this until um goodness knows how long. And it is. It's like it's a franchise that's never really gonna die, is it?
No, there's no chance now.
No.
It's gonna live forever.
Kind of a closing question to this, but do you think that there would ever be another resurgence of Pokemania that would essentially match what it was in the 90s and early 2000s?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything that could just nowadays. Like you mentioned it before about lack of internet, but there was only so many TV channels. Never mind, lack of internet. There's only so much media we could consume, and I think nowadays this isn't. This is I prefer this. I will say. I don't like to have to watch the same shows that everyone else does, but I don't think anything could ever be as big. And obviously, in terms of like popularity, it's probably more popular than it was back then, just in terms of sheer numbers of like eyes on it.
Yeah.
You got things like Twitch, there's people playing it in all numerous different ways. Every game's getting played. Like we mentioned before, Sword and Shield actually made the most money ever for a game, I believe, out of the Pokemon franchise. But I don't think you ever see that all-encompassing boom again like that.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. But I think it's now, it's to me, it's a bit like Lego might be the closest example I can think of, where it's like Lego had a huge boom once upon a time, and then it just existed for a long time. And I think that's where Pokemon will be now. Like they've got stores, they've got cafes, they've got theme parks, they've got all sorts of stuff, and it's just never like I don't think anything could ever boom that big. I think the last thing really that will do it, I don't think we'll ever see it again. Like anything, I think Game of Thrones might have been the last one, in terms of just sheer boom, and obviously Fortnite just now. But that's not been managed to hit that multimedia aspect of it. So yeah, long story short, I don't think we will. I just don't think it's possible.
I'm just thinking back to like when you were saying about other franchises like Lego and Game of Thrones. I mean, look at Harry Potter. Like this is a whole like chat tsunami in itself. But with Harry Potter, like revolutionised essentially how popular young adult like. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a kids book, but like how those kind of films could be so popular. And you saw like other films try to do exactly the same thing, like with Twilight, Percy Jackson, Hunger Games. They just never. I mean, still earned their money, whether it was like through infamy or they were genuinely good films, but it never reached that same level though. And I suppose it's same with similar franchises alongside Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Beyblade, Digimon. There was actually another series. I actually completely forgot until I was researching this. Do you remember one that it was basically a barcode scanner? I never got
Yeah,
them.
yeah, it was like a barcode scanner and it scanned little monsters and
Yeah.
didn't it? I never had one either, but Pokemon itself then stole that idea because I
Okay.
had the Generation 3 Pokemon cards that had the barcode scanner attachment.
Oh, really?
Never had the barcode scanner, but
Uh-huh.
I had the cards that had the scanner on it, so you can Google that sometime, see what that was all about. I actually can't remember what it was supposed to do. It's something to do with the TCG.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could scan Pokemon cards that had a barcode on it. So
Ah,
there's your random bit of merch fact for the day.
nice. It is weird how even now, like, there's a lot of facts that we're only kind of just finding out about. Like, I was talking to you about not even the Pokemania, but more like the Pokepanic of like both
Yep.
parents and certain groups that believed it was like part of the Antichrist. Let's just say.
Yep.
It was going to be the satanic panic, and you use potions in Pokemon, and that means that automatically it's a devil game, and it's weird because I don't think those kind of, I mean, I don't know because I was a child, so maybe this went on and I was just too oblivious, but it wasn't really a big thing here, maybe, but over in America, I know it was huge, and it's something that you don't know or don't really like notice when you're a kid, but
Right.
like when you go back to like look at the franchise as a whole years later, and you're like, oh my god, people really thought that it was going to be the end times if you invited Pokemon into your home, and you're like, among all the parodies that came after it, like South Park is like one of the more famous ones of that as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know, there's just so many like small things that like even today, as I was saying before, with the like beta Pokemon
yeah.
that are coming out with Gen 2, and you're like, that has been sitting there for over 20 years. And it honestly is scary to think that apparently Pokemon Yellow came out in the year 2000. That was 21 years ago. Yeah, just that's my quota for making you feel old for the day.
Pokemon Yellow can buy alcohol in any country.
Yeah,
That's any country legally sells it. But there you go.
yeah, yeah.
There's your Pokemon Yellow fact for the day.
Oh god, I feel old now. Let's end this room. Yeah, before we wrap up, will we go through some of the comments and see what we got?
Real quick before we do. What's your favorite Pokemon?
Overall, it is honestly hard to tell. Honestly, it is like, if for some reason I don't know, for some reason I'm a fan of Pokemon that are kind of not appreciated as much. Like, as I said before, Porygon. Hashtag
Hmm.
Porygon did nothing wrong. Even Pokemon came out and admitted that, by the way.
Yeah, yeah,
They said it on
I've seen
Twitter,
that.
and I was like, "Do you see? Do you see?" As I said, I like Farfetch'd as well. Totodile, because it's a lot of Pokemon that just either I like the design of them,
Yeah.
or I just like I mean, like Bulbasaur as well. Like, either I like the design or I've got an emotional attachment to them. Like, even for example, with Pikachu and Raichu. Like, would you say you're a Pikachu person or a Raichu person?
Can we caveat this with Chonky Pikachu?
Yes.
I am
Okay. No.
Chonky Pikachu boy,
Okay.
Raichu, Thin Pikachu. That's my tier ranking. I
Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, I'll give you that because yeah,
love the beef.
yeah. Because yeah, I remember that when Pikachu used to be like a chunky boy, and then he
Yeah,
lost the weight throughout the generations, and I was like, "Oh my god, what's your diet plan?" Second of all,
yeah.
because I've actually got like a toy Pikachu upstairs, and it's one of those ones that you put the pencil into, and yeah, that is like the kind of like flat, like steamed bun shape. So yeah, I would probably say, I don't know, I would probably say Porygon, maybe. I don't know. I just like the idea of a Cyberpunk. There's like half Pokemon, half Digimon. But there's just so many to choose from. What would you say? Like, I know I'm kind of like reverse doing you just now.
Snorlax.
Oh,
I'm
Snow,
always
of
prepared
course,
for that
yeah. Oh
question.
gosh, yeah.
There is no doubt in my
Yeah.
mind. It's always Snorlax.
I just
He's my
wanted to
boy.
make, yeah, I just wanted to make sure there because I was like, is it though? It's like, yes, 100%. It's kind of weird though because just the way we were talking there, it is like earlier Pokemon that
Oh
we're
yeah.
choosing. Like, it's not like something like I don't know, Grookey, let's say. Nah, I would not put him in my top, like, 1,000. But, yeah, like, it's not any of the new ones, although the new ones do have some cool designs.
Yeah,
Like Corviknight, which is just basically a metal bird, and it's like,
yeah, that's
yes,
badass.
I do like
I
that
like
one.
the ice cream one. Yeah,
Yeah,
to evolve it, you spin in a circle.
yeah.
Big fan of that.
There's one called, I think it's Phalanx. I think, and it's just basically like wee balls with like swords and shields or something.
Oh yeah,
Or
yeah. It's like
sorry,
the
shields.
Spartans, aren't
Yeah,
they? It's like Roman soldiers. Yeah, that's
it's,
brilliant.
it's just such. I have to admit, like that is a whole subject in itself. But just like they're on, even in the new generations, there is definitely something for everyone with design and things. Yeah, I thought you would have more time to think about it.
Nope.
Nope. So yeah, where can these lovely people who are listening to this episode find you on other platforms?
Well, if you've liked the sound of my voice, I started speaking really funny there since I did that. 'Cause I was like, how does my voice sound? If you like the sound of my voice, you can catch me on the Beer and Chill podcast. You can follow us Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Beer and Chill Pod. We put out new episodes every single Monday. We've just finished our absolute saga going through the Assassin's Creed franchise. That was fantastic fun. But we've also spoken about movies, games, TV shows. We've also been chatting about WrestleMania. That's this weekend, so we're chatting about that on Monday. And next week, a little preview, we are doing Marvel versus DC. We're going through and comparing the graphic novels, the movies, the TV shows, and the games. So if any of that seems like it might catch your fancy, hit us up on those platforms. Or just type in Beer and Chill Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Like, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Anchor, we're on Podcast Addict, whatever. You'll find us. If you want more of me in your life, you can find me on Instagram at Martin McAllister. That is my wrestling profile. Basically, it's all about me as a professional wrestler and the crazy world out there. So yeah, that's the places to hit me up.
No, go check him out.
Thank you.
I was just like, ha ha ha. No, 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 really, guys, check him out. Do it. Do it now. No,
Do
honestly.
it.
Actually, just I didn't want to interrupt you earlier, but just when you were talking about the Assassin's Creed episodes that you did, yeah, they were great, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I could definitely tell a lot of effort went into those when I was listening, and it was just
Yeah, I even played some games for it. Like I don't usually play much games like at all, like on request. I even went
Yeah.
away and played a bunch of the games, so that was
That's just
it was time
dedication.
consuming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's dedication to the art, though, isn't it?
exactly.
So yeah, go check him out. And if you want to see more of my content, then you know what's coming. You can catch me, of course, on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube under the name Satsunami42. If you want to catch any more episodes of Chatsunami, then you can find me on Anchor, Spotify, and much like Beer and Chill Podcast, on all good podcast distributors. Please feel free to check me out if you want to see more of this content. As always, guys, stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay hydrated. Bye, guys.
Thanks for healing your Pokemon. We hope to see you again. Bing, bing, beep, beep, bing.